What's up, RPG nerds? Welcome back to the channel. In this video, I'll be making an updated version of the Octopath Traveler 2 starting characters tier list that I made a while back, right after I had beaten the demo. In this video, we're going to be making a new version. Originally, I wasn't even going to make this, and then Edwin Calderon was like, you should do this. I'm like, oh my gosh, I should. Why have I been waiting so long for this? There's no gameplay shoutouts in this video or anything, so let's get right into this. Actually, one shout out to Robert M. Bot Composing, which the last couple videos and from now on, I will be using his Partitio's theme lo-fi cover on my channel. Thank you so much to him because Partitio's theme is one of my new favorite songs of all time. Alright, let's get into this with, I'm going to go in Octopath order as always. And starting on the first character is going to be Ochette, which I still believe is S tier. After all this, I believe that she's one of the best starting characters in the game. And why is that? So, not right. Well, here's the thing. So right when she starts, Akala and Mahina are very powerful at breaking enemies, and they're very effective. Honestly, I found them to be more effective than using Osvald, studying foe, and all that, because you can just find the weakness and do damage at the same time instead of using Analyze or using Study Foe. So I felt like Ochette was the more useful character here, and because of that, she is very good at the very start. And then after that, since she's one of those like 3 characters in this game that doesn't really need a secondary job, she isn't being held back by the fact that she doesn't get a secondary job at the very beginning. And then as you progress, once you get around level 20, she's one of the best characters for the start and the mid game, which are really the important parts, because by the time you finish like the mid game, that's about where you have beaten your main character's final story. So by that point, it doesn't even matter who you started with anymore, except that they're kind of leveled up. But Ochette really is the best, or one of the best in S tier, because she's very good at the beginning, because she has some powerful things, and since she auto captures and has infinite uses of the beast she captures, that is huge. It's way different than Haunted was, and that's why she's in S tier and Haunted was in like B tier. And also around level 20, you can go get like Capture Light Revenant and just beat like the entire game, like the majority of the game, just using the Light Revenant. Obviously, that's not going to work for some of the super boss fights and stuff, but you can capture something at level 20 that makes you so you can just cheese the whole game with Ochette. And getting to level 20 is not very hard. Like by the time you've beaten everyone's chapter 1, you should at least be at level 20, right? So the fact that Ochette is this powerful, she's very good, her beasts are powerful, and since she can just cheese the game with her different beasts, it's very awesome. And of course, another thing that's really good is you can start stockpiling items with her prepare ability and make so you never need to use a dancer again, because basically all of the prepared items can buff you, and it can make so you don't have to have any sort of dancer buffer in your party, and it can get you that extra secondary job slot, which is one reason why I feel like Agnea is one of the weakest starting characters, because Ochette can easily get these items when you prepare monsters that you captured. Then you can prepare them and you can get buffing items. So stockpiling up buffing items. You can also befriend people. What's the other thing she has? I'm forgetting. All right. Well, if you've seen this being cut, it's because I forgot about Ochette's second path action. Her second path action is Provoke, of course. So, but yeah, with her Befriend path action, with her, which is something that other people have, and this one isn't too hard to use because you're going to be preparing a lot of enemies. With her Befriend path action, with her preparing, that can be very powerful items that you can use throughout the game, kind of like how Steel is very useful. And because of her powerful beast lore ability, she is one of the best starting characters in Octopath Traveler 2. By the end game, is she one of the best characters? Not necessarily. Although Provoke Beast can be a very good way of breaking people, she isn't really one of the best endgame characters, but overall she's a very good starting character. Alright, speaking of characters that are good, I can't even talk today, sorry guys. Speaking of characters that are good during the end game, we have Castti, but she isn't as good of a starting character, so she's going to be in C tier. So the problem with Castti, well, you don't have the alchemy ingredients that you do get later in the game. And you're probably wondering, if you watched my video on Octopath Traveler 1, you're probably like, well, you put Alphen in like B tier, so what's the problem with Castti here? Well, first of all, the characters, there's some really good characters in this game, whereas a lot of the it's all about strength here in this game, because it's not about making money or stealing in this game, since multiple characters can get you items and stuff like that. It's more about just who is the most useful near the beginning of the game, during the mid-game, etc. And Castti really isn't that useful, because Alphen, I put him in B tier, because yes, he concocted, but he also had a very good apothecary job. Well, very good. It's good at the beginning of the game, at least. But here, even the apothecary job isn't good at the beginning of the game, because, like, Empoison is gone and replaced with Poison Axe, which in my opinion is much weaker, since it only works for like 2 turns. The healing abilities are a lot weaker in this game, etc. Yes, it can heal and revive in one ability, which I guess is nice, but the weak to poison ability is not a good replacement at all. It's one of the worst abilities. So, like, you know, why use Castti? Why would you pick her as your starting character? Because Concoct is amazing, but you can just put her in your party once it starts picking up, once it starts getting good. And yes, you do have her every job counts, but you shouldn't be relying on her latent power to make her good, right? You shouldn't have to rely on latent power for a good starting character. And Castti is very good later on once you've built up a stock of items, and you should definitely use her, but it's not a character you want to be forced to use for this period of time at the start of the game, etc. So, and Alphen I did put a bit higher because of his apothecary job being a little bit better. I mean, they're still both bottom tier jobs, apothecary in both games. I mean, Dota's Charity is very good, but situational, obviously, there's always good uses. However, yes, Castti's an amazing character. I actually think she's the best character in the game by the end game. In my opinion, Hikari, Castti, one of the two. But starting, I would not pick Castti. I just don't see why you would pick Castti when you could pick someone that's much more reliable, even like Temenos, you know, all that stuff. And you don't really want to start with a healing character. That's kind of not really the best way to go. Alright, next is going to be Temenos, which I'm going to put in B tier. Like what I was saying about Castti. But better, because, I mean, yes, you don't want a healer. You don't want to start with a healer in your party. You don't want to do all that. And Castti isn't as reliant on a secondary job as Temenos. I feel like Temenos has so much power once you get the Scholar secondary job, which means that he is very good. But right at the start, you don't want to just be stuck with a healer as your first job. But there's not a time I ever feel like Temenos is a bad pick, so I put him in B. Because he's above average, but not very good, not on a dominant pick. Because, I mean, honestly, you want to have a really good person stuck in your party. And then, yeah, you can just fill it in with healers and stuff. You want someone to be leveled up a lot and stuff. So, yes, I think that Temenos is a good pick. But yeah, you don't want to be stuck with a healer first. And it takes a little bit of time to get him going, get him to be a good character. Because at the start, he's actually one of the weakest. Yes, Castti, like, for boss fights, Castti will be the better healer. Every drop counts and all that stuff. Because of how you have to use advanced magic to make heal wounds actually be like heal more, it's a lot harder to actually heal with the cleric job in this game. But also, I think that Temenos is just overall a better pick than Castti because, yes, he's weaker, but he's more reliable, and as a starting character, you want a reliable character. So, alright, let's move on. So, next is going to be Osvald, which I feel like Osvald might be the most dominant character to start with. He is the easiest to deal huge damage with right out of the gate. Yes, he uses a lot of SP, but buying some plums is not that big of a deal. Stealing, mugging, right? So what's the problem here? Well, I think he's the worst character in the game later on. And whereas I feel like Ochette still has very good, like, she is still very good later on, I feel like Osvald really falls down, becomes the worst character in the game. So I would put him in S, but my biggest problem is since he just isn't worth training compared to the other characters. Yes, if you're going to fight Caldera, you probably want to make sure that he's leveled up. But if you're just going casual, since Caldera isn't even the final boss in this game, it's a V-Day, which is not that hard. If you have a low-level Osvald, you'll probably still survive that fight. But you don't want Osvald to be your super over-leveled character when as soon as he leaves the party, that's about the time that you should never use him again, unless you're fighting Caldera, because he's just not really the strongest pick. Like, Scholar Temenos is honestly a stronger pick than Osvald will ever be, in my opinion. So I'm just like, why would you use Osvald when you have better picks? And because of that, I don't think you should use him as your starting character and waste all those levels on a different character. Of course, if you're going to be grinding anyway, it doesn't really matter, but why grind when you could just pick a starting character that you're always going to stick with? And I'm not biased. I picked Osvald as my starting character, and I realized, like, he really wasn't the best pick. I thought he was going to be, in my previous video, I was like 100% best character. Yes, Study Foe, Cyrus was one of the best in the first game. I was like, he's going to be the best. He really wasn't, but Study Foe isn't really as useful in this game since there's so many ways to break enemies without actually hitting their weakness. But yeah, honestly, I don't think Osvald is the best, like I said in my last video. Alright, I put Partitio way too high in my last video, to be honest. I'm going to put him in B tier. I think I put him in top at A tier, which would make sense because I thought business partner was going to be more of like an easy way to get money, like with Eye for Money. I knew it was going to be harder, so I didn't put him in S tier like I put Tressa in the first game, but I still thought it was going to be like a viable way of making money. It really isn't. And Temenos is really good as a BP battery early in the game with his latent power, but early in the game, getting his latent power isn't something you can just do. You can't just put on the full power ability right when you start the game. And since he doesn't have latent power at the beginning of every battle and can just donate BP like crazy, he's not really the most useful at the start of the game. However, it's always good to have a BP battery. I'm not complaining, but just putting the merchant job on someone else will mostly cover it. I still think he's more reliable than like Castti, who's a main focus. Like, the merchant job is one of the best jobs in the game, and therefore, if you do find a way to exploit business partners and really do think about it that way, then yes, he can be very good. But since the merchant job really relies heavily on like sidestep, seal of diffusion, and hired help, and a lot of things that you don't get really early on, I don't think Partitio is the best choice. I do think he's more reliable. He's still like a BP battery, more reliable than Castti, who has a mid-base job and just doesn't have the resources to be concocting. However, I think Partitio still isn't as good as the other characters on this list. Alright, I think the worst is going to be Agnea. Originally, I was like, you know what, she's not going to be that bad. Dance session's nice. The dancer class was great in the first game. Great buffing class. Problem is that was like the only way of buffing in the first game. In this game, there are a lot of great ways to buff through latent powers, talents, all this stuff, EX skills. Like, there's a lot of ways to buff your characters. Or even Osvald, you can buff him and then teach it to everybody else, or, you know. And Agnea isn't bad. Of course, like, later in the game, once you get, like, Windy Refrain, different, like, I don't know, Inventor Agnea is very powerful. Agnea isn't bad. I mean, I do think she's one of my least favorite characters to use. I think she's my second least favorite after Osvald. I don't think she's bad at all. I just think that the dancer isn't really something you need early in the game. You don't really need to be buffing when you could just be nuking everything with Osvald or Hikari or Ochette. And Ochette, if you just capture and prepare some items, you can replace her dancer abilities. Or early in the game when you don't even have EX skills, once you get the dancer subclass, Dance Session is not as good as I previously expected it to be. After playing through the game, I used it like 4 times. And Agnea really wasn't as good as I was hoping. The Dancer class wasn't as good as I was hoping. So just putting the Dancer on like Ochette or something is more than enough. It's more than enough. You don't need something. You don't need Agnea to start off. And of course, you don't want to be starting with a character that's just a support character. Yes, she does have Ruinous Kick and Dagger Dance, so she's a little bit more powerful than Primrose was in like the first game. That's why I don't have a character in D tier this time around. Agnea is the lowest, but she's still not the best, and the crazy things she can do with her latent power aren't really that accessible early in the game. So I get why a lot of people would say, oh, I started with Agnea, and I like her support abilities. Like, I don't really think anyone's that bad, but according to just the way I played this game, I found that Agnea really wasn't the best pick. Alright, next let's move on to Throné, which I think she and Osvald are in a weird place where I feel like they're both very good at the beginning of the game, but progressively get worse. So, she's very powerful with Surprise Attack. She has 2 turns with her latent power, which is very, very good. And she can steal the heck out of everything. Whereas Mug is a little bit, less reliable. I mean, I like it more. It's more fun. But you can steal basically anything. Whereas you have to actually be like good to Mug, or like get crazy hired help and sidestep merchant, whatever. There are ways to beat people early with Mug, but stealing is just an amazing way to stockpile items. If you just go around every town, if you search the whole world, go around every town, build up stockpile of items, and then go through the chapters, then you're going to be having like an easy time. Like, you're going to be strong. But again, like I said, Osvald's ways to mug, Agnea can entreat, Ochette can prepare, all this stuff. You can get access to a lot of items without necessarily having to steal in this game. That's why I feel like Therion was better in the first, and Therion is one of the best characters in the game throughout the game, whereas Throné I feel like is one of the weakest down there with Osvald and Agnea for later in the game. And I do think she's very good, but again, like I said with Osvald, she falls down a bit, and I don't think that she is as worth using later on. But again, with powerful surprise attack, with good debuffing abilities, and with her ability to steal early on, she has a lot of stuff going for her, and I still think she's a good starting character. But like I said, you don't want to be stuck with her, have all the levels put on Throné when you have better characters as well. I feel Osvald is very strong throughout, at least throughout your 5 stories for Osvald or whatever. But Throné, not as much. Her surprise attack, like all that stuff. And I feel like during that portion even, like, you want to have her as like a healer or something. She's not even the best healer because she can have 2 turns, like, I don't know, give herself some BP with a pomegranate and then instantly give someone the Cleric Divine or something. Like, there are things you can do with Throné, but I feel like Osvald is more dominant until you can get a fully powered Arms Master and all this stuff. And by that point, it's kind of not even it's not even relevant who you started with anymore. So I think Throné is a little bit worse than Osvald because Osvald is just so dominant, whereas Throné is just kind of good. So, yeah. And then Hikari, I'm going to put in S tier. This is the biggest difference, I feel like, from my first video. I put Hikari below Agnea, I believe. I was like, well, Dance Session is going to be so cool. No, it wasn't. I don't know what I was smoking. But, like, you know, Hikari is very good. He's the strongest character in the game by the end of the game. And while he can't break it with the Light Revenant, like Ochette can, there's so many good learned skills. And if you use strategies like Sidestep, Vengeful Blade, you can learn really, and I don't know, I guess you have to grind levels, so it doesn't really work like Ochette does, where it's like level 20, you have to actually be at a high level. But Hikari is just a great pick. He's a very solid fighter, very, very good. He's one of the best characters in the late game, and therefore you want to be leveling him up, getting learned skills with him, keeping him in the party for a while. And he isn't really, he's more of an unconventional starting character in my opinion, because yes, he's very, very powerful, but the biggest reason you want to start with him is because he's so good and you want to get him powered up. And there's never a time where Hikari's a bad choice. His learned skills can make him become anything you want him to be. And because of that, he's very versatile. I don't think he's as broken as Ochette is for the start of the game, for the mid game and stuff. But I think I totally didn't understand how overpowered learned skill was going to be. I thought they were just going to be like, weak abilities, but they're not. They're insane. And because of that, I think Hikari is one of the strongest starting characters in Octopath Traveler 2. Thank you guys all for watching this video. If you enjoyed this video, check out some other Octopath Traveler 2 videos on the channel. Please tell me any requests down below, because this was a requested video, and there are a lot of videos that I might have just didn't think about doing. And I thought I was done with Octopath Traveler 2 videos until, you know, this was requested. And I'm kind of glad, because I was already kind of getting bored without Octopath Traveler 2 videos to make. But thank you guys all for watching. Check out other Octopath Traveler 2 videos on the channel. Request down below what else you want to see. Any other game, it could be any game, or it could be Octopath Traveler 2. Thank you guys all for watching. Have a great day. Peace out, RPG nerds.